Pretty well taking their seats.
Hi, everybody. My name's Margie Corsi, and I live with my husband, Dan, on Dr. Eldridge Drive, and I'm glad to be here tonight. I'll share the invocation. Father God, we come before you today recognizing the fact that you are worthy of praise. You are the source of all that is good. You are the source of all our blessings. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather together this day. We ask for your hand of blessing on this meeting, the city of Washougal, its citizens, our family, friends, and neighbors. We ask that you would guide and direct this meeting so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. Thank you for helping our city leaders accomplish the necessary work and goals. Amen.
Thank you, Margie. With that, I will call the meeting to order and ask that you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rose, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
And Paige is here as well. Under amendments to the agenda, I do have two items to add to your agenda this evening under new business or discussion items, either one. From our workshop discussion, we did not get to the items of the oil train resolution or to the line of succession for administrative decisions. So those two I'll put on there under C and D. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Next order on the agenda are public comments. Any members of the public that would like to address council? Okay, hearing none at this time, move on to the consent agenda. Council, this evening your consent agenda has 5 items on it. Your workshop minutes of January 12th, 2015. Your council minutes of January 12th, 2015. Accounts payable checks totaling $358,826.73. Payroll checks and vouchers totaling $178,224.94. And also Agenda Bill 3-15, an authorization for the mayor to sign a supplemental professional services agreement with Innovative Services for an extension on janitorial through 2015.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Seeing no objections, so ordered. Brings us to new business, Agenda Bill 4-15, an authorization for funds transfer for Emergency Utility Assistance Program. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before you is a request to authorize the transfer of $500 into 2 separate utility customers' accounts pursuant to your Emergency Utility Assistance Program. The applications were reviewed by the Finance Committee and they were determined to meet the requirements and have recommended approval for each of the requests. As you'll note in the staff report, Finance Director Forsberg is acknowledging that you lowered the fund balance as part of your 2015 budget approval. She hasn't affected that fund transfer yet, so it still shows the higher amount, but she will affect that fund transfer during the first quarter of this year. The recommended action is to authorize the transfer of funds from the Utility Assistance Program to the customer utility accounts as approved by the Finance Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the authorize the transfer of funds from the Utility Assistance Program fund to the customer utility account as approved by the Finance Committee.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to authorize the transfer of funds from the Utility Assistance Program Fund to the customer's utility accounts as approved by the Finance Committee. Council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. That brings us to Agenda Bill 5-15, a sale of surplus property, Lot 13, Block 13, Hathaway Addition. Mr. Scott.
I could add, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Don's going to handle it. Yep.
In an attempt to locate property owned by the city of Washougal, the Public Works Department has determined that a commercial lot on East Street in the city of Washougal, namely Lot 13, Block 13, Hathaway Addition, is actually owned by the city. An investigation further revealed that the city actually gave John and Judy Scott a building permit to build on the property in 1996. The Scotts have been using the property for their purposes since that time. A recent discussion with the Scott family has determined they believe that the property came to them in an estate. However, further investigation revealed the property came to ownership in the city in 1967. City staff has determined that the property is not needed for city purposes, and it would be appropriate to declare the property surplus and sell the property. Since the Scott family has built a building on the property, it was decided to offer the property to them at fair market value of $62,400 established by the current tax assessment. The Scott family has agreed to pay that price for the property in exchange for a deed to the property by the city. Recommended action is to read the resolution by title only, declaring the property to be surplus and authorizing the sale of the property to John and Judy Scott, followed by pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we read the resolution by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
A resolution declaring property to be surplus and authorizing the sale of the property, Lot 13, Block 13, Hathaway Addition, owned by the city of Washougal.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Council discussion? Dave?
Every once in a while, as a council, we get it wrong. When we do, we clean up our own mess. That's what this is about tonight.
And we're making $62,000 for it.
Pretty good mess.
And actually, to be more correct, the council didn't even create this mess, so. Any other council comments or questions? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to item C, our oil train resolution. Councilman Boger.
Let me start by apologizing for being a little slow in getting this done. This is some minor revisions I made after looking at it a little bit more over the weekend. And also apologize to the committee members for not keeping you in the loop on my thinking. As Mark Twain said, the ideal committee has 3 members with 2 of the members absent, so I think this is the one, yes.
Before you get much further, I'd like to recuse myself from the discussion, so I'll step outside while you're discussing it. Thanks.
All right. When the committee did meet, we discussed basically half dozen topics that we'd like the resolution to deal with. And not everyone was unanimous on this. But to discuss the effect of pipeline construction on the increase in oil train traffic through Washougal. Safety was a big concern. Traffic impacts. Disproportionate impact on Washougal for development of oil trains and oil facilities. Crowding out more favorable job sources for industry on the tracks. Basically, it makes it harder to get agricultural commodities to market and things like that. And finally, intervention in the EFSEC, Energy Facilities Site Evaluation Council process. The resolution deals with all those, although I think I may have not dealt with the disproportionate impact provision there. Since we met, which has been over a month ago, I've learned a few things about the process and what's going on in the state, and what's going on with the FSEC proposal. If you have the resolution in front of you, about towards the, a little bit below the bottom half, a little bit below the middle of the page on the resolution, FSEC, there's a whereas clause that says FSEC has ordered a gap analysis that studies the gaps in safety protection in the city of Vancouver as a result of increased oil train traffic, but this gap analysis will not include the city of Washougal at this time. So I think that's one thing that we need to definitely as a city step up to and ask that, you know, whatever gap we have in safety measures be addressed by FSEC as well. There's no reason why we should not be included in that I can see. And going on to the next page, the other thing I've heard, and this is kind of speculation, the second recital, whereas the Tesoro Savage proposal should not be approved merely to avoid oil trains from continuing on to the Puget Sound area. And some of the, what I've heard about what's been going on at FSEC meetings, it appears that staff is attempting to facilitate the approval of the Tesoro Savage proposal. They aren't, they're a little accommodating, I guess, to what they're trying to do. And there's some speculation that this is because they look at Tesoro Savage going in here, it would avoid oil trains from running through the Puget Sound area, because they would just stop here and get shipped out here, and it wouldn't affect the Puget Sound area. So that's something I did not discuss with the committee, but I think it's worth pointing out, and I don't think that's a good reason to cite the facility in Vancouver.
And when you mentioned staff, you're talking about FSEC staff.
FSEC staff, yeah. And then another recital where you see the underlined language, that's what I changed here. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a linkage in the recitals to, you know, how the increase in, or how they're not constructing pipelines will increase oil train traffic. And that's basically kind of making the linkage a little bit more clearer in there. Now, since this came out on Friday, I'd gotten some comments back today about on a few things, and this is for council discussion of where we want to go with this. Gotten some pushback on mentioning pipelines at all in this, that's not really germane to the idea, and the idea is here is to stop, this came from Mr. Rittenhouse, the idea is to oppose Tesoro. Also, you know, as a secondary measure on that is to not mention Keystone, the Keystone XL pipeline by name. I've been reading some of the literature, what's going on. There's some debate about whether that has any relevance or bearing on this at all. I do know that the Canadian ambassador has said that if they don't build Keystone XL, that there's going to be more trains on the tracks. There's been also discussion about a spur going into the Keystone XL pipeline that will move Bakken crude through that pipeline instead of through by train, potentially by train traffic through Washougal. And then from our workshop, or the public comments before our workshop, there was some suggestion that we actually formally oppose the Tesoro Savage project. So those are the things I think are a little bit unsettled, and I'm not clear about where the council would like to go on those. So with that, I'm done with my report.
Council discussion?
Would you state who was on the committee again, for the record?
Myself, Councilmember Greenlee, and Councilmember Shoemaker.
Thank you.
Joyce?
Who is this resolution going to?
The governor, FSEC, and our congressional delegation.
Yeah, typically, we would send it to all of the state representatives, all of our state representatives as well.
I have a few comments in regards to it. I didn't see the need to put the Keystone Pipeline in there myself. I got this from Ryan earlier, and I thought that we could be a little bit more specific, things that had concerned me, that in the Stevenson one, especially in regards to that the city requests that the railroad submit an emergency environmental cleanup plan in case of a derailment affecting our community. And it's a whole paragraph on that, and I
saw that.
I thought that was great. And if there's nothing like that.
I didn't get it until
Yeah.
after I written this.
I also like the fact that they urged the governor of, where is it here? urges the federal government to immediately implement safety regulations regarding train speeds, rail car designs that have not, I mean, BNSF themselves, that was their one point, that they did say that they, they're lobbying themselves for higher standards. So I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing to say as well. And then I also like the fact that they said that they're liable for all potential damage created by transporting the crude by rail or barge. I just thought we could be a little more pointed on what we were looking for safety-wise. I know other council members had said that it was better to be more broad, but I personally like more specific language myself.
If you remember, the prior resolution had a
whole
lot
list,
of detail about
yeah.
train cars and.
Yeah.
Actually, I would urge the opposite. I'd much rather generalize here, because that gives FSEC and others who are participating in the process, the review process, a chance to bring up new things, new ideas, and details as they become known. Whereas if we focus on a specific set of recommendations, I'm worried that they'll say, well, we've done that, so let's move on.
I guess these really aren't that specific, though, because it's saying speeds which are safe, cars which are safe. So it's not detailing a specific car, so to speak. It's just saying, we want you to look into the safety standards of what's out there now, and I think that's something we'd all agree we want them to do.
And I would propose to put that in terms of, as you just said, set safety standards which will alleviate or mitigate these impacts on the city of Washougal, and not try to recommend to them what they might be, because we're not the safety experts, but we're sure as heck the people who are impacted. So let's tell them to mitigate the impacts and give them a free hand to do it. As much as I would like to tie the governor's hands on any other subject, on this particular one, I'd like to give him freedom of action so that he can come up with some really good solutions.
We need to do something here. It's a historic moment. I basically agree with you that
Time for another wave.
that
Great minds think alike, Paul.
if it's too specific, I mean, just a simple example, we mentioned Tesoro Savage. Suppose Tesoro Savage sold it to Hess Oil. Does that mean that this is now irrelevant? And not only that, but my understanding is that even though presently FSEC may want to put it in our backyard instead of in the Sound, that there are a number of proposals throughout the state, but what's true about all of them is that all of that oil would come through Washougal, no matter where it ended up being offloaded. It would come through Washougal. So I would like to see a bit more generalization on oil terminals or something like that. And I certainly don't want to see specifics on this or that particular DOT standard. I agree that it needs to be fairly general in terms of we need better safety. And then the other thing is, this isn't, it strikes me that this is entirely focused on FSEC, and there may actually be other agencies that weigh in on this. And so, again, I'd like to be a bit more general on declaring ourselves a party of interest in before all proceedings of all regulatory agencies that might weigh in on this.
Including but not limited to FSEC.
Yes, exactly. I mean, conceivably, the Corps or even NIMS will weigh in on this. NIMS, what?
National Marine,
National
that's it.
Fishery, something or other.
National Marine Fishery Service.
That's it. I did have some more stuff that I wrote, but I think it's pretty well covered. The only thing that I wrote down that I didn't, well, there are two things. My paragraph was, whereas there have been a number of derailments and spills associated with oil trains, the City of Washougal expresses concern for our safety. Our city's major water supply is less than 200 feet from the tracks. The major public works facility borders the tracks. City Hall is only a few hundred feet away. Any spill, no matter how promptly or competently handled, could be catastrophic for our city.
Some of that was in the earlier one, and the feedback I got was that we shouldn't go into
Yeah,
detail like that.
I don't have a serious qualm with what's there. I just,
I'm happy to add that.
and then kind of along the same lines, further, our livelihood and our community are inextricably linked to the Columbia River. In parentheses, the river is our southern border. Any significant spill into the Columbia River, even miles up or downstream, could devastate our local economy.
In support of our colleague who took the time and trouble to write all this and research it, first of all, I appreciate your efforts. I like the mention of the pipelines because I think that's how we got to this situation. And I agree with Paul that the mention of the Keystone pipeline and specifically may not be appropriate, but pipelines in general are. That's how we got here. No pipelines, then it's going to go by rail car. So it's there's a, you know, because of this, we have that I think that it's causation that needs to be in there.
I have no problem taking Keystone out, if that's the will of the council.
But I want to leave the pipelines, plural, in. Just take the specific Keystone out. It may be a little geographically a little far from this issue.
Yeah, I don't know that it is, though. And that's, you know, obviously, I guess that pipeline in itself, or any pipelines, potentially are, you know, just a political red light out there flashing. But at some point, somebody has got to start, and maybe they already have, and again, it's just communication, and there's a whole lot of people that don't know it. Until we figure out if we're going to continue to rely on things like oil coming out of the ground, and how do you get it from point A to point B, until you come up with more comprehensive ways of delivering that oil to where it needs to go, it's going to continue on rails. If it continues on rails, and if we've got one of the largest in this state, one of the largest sets of refineries and deep water ports, it's going to come our direction. So it doesn't matter if the pipeline potentially is clear back on the East Coast. If they're getting more there than they can handle, at some point it will become feasible financially for them to rail it out here.
And I think Paul and I discussed this earlier today, and one of the things we came up with was Keystone. The name Keystone is a political lightning rod. We wanted to get away from that, but still keep the pipeline issue in there.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think it's part of, and not saying I'm for pipelines or against pipelines, but I think it's a much broader issue that as long as the Congress is, you know, going like this and not trying to figure out some of those things.
Well, it's like
the
waving
thing
that
that's
red flag in front of the bull.
Yeah, but at the same time, while they don't take action on that, trains continue to roll, and more and more and more of them. So somewhere in there, we've got to find a mix that is reasonable. Joyce?
I think the safety issue is critical, but the traffic issue is something that we're dealing with daily And I would like us to have some sort of a way to get some mitigation from the railroads and helping us with another overpass or something, if that can be addressed in the resolution as a solution, not just saying we have lots of traffic, but we need to do something, because whether those trains are carrying oil or apples, we are being held up by these longer and longer trains. And the grains are coming now, and, I mean, it's like,
It's like the ragu, it's in there.
I thought it was. I can't find it now, though. I thought I talked about,
Yeah, I thought you talked about an overpass specifically.
yeah, elimination of at-grade crossings, I think is what it was.
well,
It's down in
we
section
talk a
1
lot
of
about
the-
Tesoro Savage,
Okay.
which is an issue. In my mind, it's a Vancouver issue, because wherever that oil is going, it's going to go someplace, and it's coming through Washougal. So our safety factor here in our city is critical, and I like that part from Stevenson about that, but also mitigation on our traffic, our traffic across our city. So
I could punch that up a little bit.
Thank you, Joe.
Don was the first one that got up and spoke. I don't know his last name.
Reineke.
Thank you. I really liked his comment that safety versus prevention, that we need to make prevention the focus. I have no verbiage to offer you, but I bet he could. He certainly had quite a bit to say. It was well thought out. And thank you for your work on this. Appreciated.
Usually council members don't write their own resolutions.
I just wanted to say, and my memory on this is certainly not perfect, and I'm not an expert, but in the years that I've been on council, the only pipeline issues that I remember in Washington State were a small extension of the Williams Company natural gas pipeline, which does pass through Washougal, and of course the explosion and fire in the pipeline in Bellingham, which is not a crude oil pipeline, but a refined products pipeline.
And ours
But-
is crude oil?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying the one that goes through Washougal is crude oil?
No, it's natural gas.
Oh,
Natural gas.
Thank you.
And in Oregon, a very similar thing. I remember there's been some ideas about petroleum pipelines floated but never taken seriously. Almost all of the pipelines that have ever been talked about in the past 20 years in Oregon are natural gas, not petroleum or petroleum products. One of the reasons why, for example, Keystone doesn't, well, to come at it a different way, what they're trying to accomplish here is to bring very light, very sweet crude from North Dakota to the West Coast to refine into motor fuels. Sweet crude, as opposed to sour crude, has very little sulfur in it. Light crude is lightweight as opposed to tar, and it's much easier to turn it into motor fuels than it is to turn tar into motor fuels. There's excess capacity for that kind of refining on the West Coast. The capacity that exists in East Texas and in Louisiana is more suited to the heavy sour crudes that the Alberta tar sands produce. That's their excess capacity. Even if you sent the Bakken crude to Louisiana, then you have the problem, how do you get it to Washington, Oregon, and California after it's refined? And there really are no pipelines to do that, nor to the best of my knowledge are there any planned. Generally speaking, even with a regulatory fast track, it takes about 10 years to build a pipeline. The slowest part being the acquisition of the property rights, because you need about 150 to 200 foot right-of-way to construct it, and then somewhere between 75 and 100 feet once it's built to be able to maintain it. And even with eminent domain processes to do that, it is a long and excruciating process having very little to do with any environmental issues. So there are all kinds of reasons why we can't wave a wand and get pipelines. I understand that. So it is certainly true that if we had had more foresight and built more pipelines, we would have pipelines that connected the backbones in the kind of west Midwest and the east Midwest to both coasts. There are much better connections from Louisiana to Boston than there are from Louisiana to anywhere on the West Coast. My dad was in the oil business, so I know more about this than I probably should. So, but that's just background. I have no problem with saying, you know, gee, if we'd built more pipelines, we wouldn't have to be shipping this by rail. But realistically, we're going to have self-driving cars before we could build those pipelines. That's it.
Other comments?
Just two questions haven't been answered that I presented. Should we actually oppose the Tesoro project? I take it not.
I see no, I don't see that that's necessary in our resolution, but that's,
Should we intervene in the FSEC process? Okay.
And any other regulatory.
And not including but not limited to. Okay.
And I agree with Joyce. I don't have a strong reason to want to mention Tesoro Savage, other than, I mean, there was some of what you had in here. Let me see if I can find it
Always just spell it.
real quick.
Supporting facilities and refineries in the region, in our local region.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, if they put it in Bellingham, we're still screwed.
There's another project that's going in at Vancouver that,
Smaller one.
the New Star project that, so far FSEC has taken the position they don't have jurisdiction
Right.
over it, but, you know, they could change their mind when the facts change. And so that would be another one we could be involved in.
Dave?
I agree with Joyce and Paul. I don't think we need to tackle the Tesoro project.
By name.
Yeah, it's just a lightning rod.
Well, there's only, at this time, there's only one FSEC, well, there's other FSEC projects going forward, and
Maybe we can say something along the lines of FSEC and other processes or whatever.
in the region.
Yeah. And we want to be a part of all of them.
Two comments that I have. One, I don't know what you do with it, the whole, the additional language on prevention and that type of stuff. I'm not sure how you tackle that. I don't get the impression, and I can't believe even in any business model that Burlington Northern wants to lose trains. So my built-in belief is that they want to make those things as safe as they can. Anything that derails causes them massive problems and huge bills. So I hear the stuff on, you know, make it stricter on prevention, but what else do you do? I
Well,
mean,
when we first started talking about this, I remember they talked about the newer cars being mandatory. If they don't have to put new cars on, they're not going to put new cars on. I
yeah,
think
but
they'd rather save the money.
Burlington has already told us in one of the largest contracts is over in Beaverton that they're already going to those regardless of being ordered to.
Just as an example, though.
So that's one. Second one, and Brent, you brought up a good point that Washougal is certainly not included in any gap analysis. I'm just wondering in the section 1 where we mentioned that analysis includes the city of Washougal, if maybe we don't want to throw a feel-good out to other communities in the state as well and put in there and other communities in Washington state. It doesn't lessen ours, but
Or Oregon, too. I don't want to see explosions over there either.
Sean, what was your first point there? I lost track of it.
on the prevention side of it, I'm just not sure how you quantify more prevention.
May I
Sure.
address that?
Sure.
I don't think you have to quantify it, but I think you can address it in the preliminaries by simply indicating we'd rather see an emphasis on prevention than cleaning up the mess after it happens. And that's in the preliminary, the introductory dialogue.
Right.
Or monologue.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Brent.
I'll get this one out.
Paige, what do you think about this? You've come up through the school system, you've been in schools that have been close to these railroad tracks, and quite frankly, there are some of us that aren't going to be here as long as you are around here, so.
I have no idea what to think. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. You have what you need for now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item D. Jennifer, are you out there somewhere?
I think she's in the kitchen.
No more detention for you. Okay, moving to item D, line of succession for administrative decisions. David?
Thank you, Mayor Council. You may recall a while back, you passed a resolution that amended your rules of procedure for who chairs the meetings to ensure that the line of succession there got all the way through the council. And we were reminded at that time that we have a similar provision in our code. It doesn't have to do with just presiding at the meetings. What it has to do with in Chapter 2.1, line of succession for administrative decisions is essentially who functions in the mayoral capacity in the absence of the mayor. So the code currently provides, as you know, that it's the mayor and then the mayor pro tem. That's statutory as well. And then here we have had it turned to the chair of the Public Safety Committee. And then from that point on, it went through the Public Safety Committee based on seniority, and the council wanted to make sure that it got all the way through the council. So this is a very simple housekeeping amendment that just says that in the event of the absence of the mayor and the mayor pro tem and all of the members of the Public Safety Committee, that the remaining 4 council members would have administrative authority in order of their seniority. So it's a little bit different line of succession than for the chairing the meeting. The chairing the meeting just goes through council members in general after the pro tem. In this one, preference is given to the Public Safety Committee by seniority, starting with the chair, and then after that, if it was a very difficult situation, there's 4 other council members and they would have administrative authority, but
What if they
based
were
on
elected the same
seniority.
year?
Excuse me?
What if the council members were elected the same year?
It was by order of swearing.
Order of swearing in. So it's pretty much just a cleanup item. It's sort of emergency management planning and just being responsive to the council's request. And so next week, this ordinance would be before you to amend the code, or in 2 weeks, excuse me.
Maybe it's just me, but I would rather see it go from pro tem to chair of the Public Safety Committee and then to council in order of seniority. And use only the chair of the Public Safety Committee in the line rather than the whole committee.
What's your rationale, Paul?
Well, just that if you think of, Public Safety Committee is certainly an important committee, but is it the committee? Does it trump all of the other committees?
In the case of a succession like this, which will most likely be brought about in the case of a disaster, the Public Safety Committee is the one that deals with disaster preparedness more than any other, with the possible exception of
Public Works?
Public,
Works. Thank you. And so I like that for that reason.
well, I'm not going to turn it into a fight. It just seemed to me that,
Take the current personalities out of it and just consider generic members.
well, that's what I was doing. I was thinking back to when I first came on council, when I'd been earliest on council. I think Rod Morris was chair of Public Safety, But then the other people on public safety were relatively new. For instance, I don't think Molly was on public safety. She may have been. And so I was just thinking that once you get beyond public safety, that what you're really looking for is experience.
Mr. Mayor?
I see where you're coming from.
I would tend to agree with Councilmember Greenlee, and for another reason, though. If we're in a situation like this, I think we need the most simple line of succession, and we have to think, well, we go to public safety, and then we go to the Public Safety Committee members through their seniority, and then when they're gone, then we go to the rest of the council through seniority. I think Public Safety Committee, or pro tem Public Safety Committee, and then just seniority to the rest of the council just is more simple and clear.
Dave?
In the situation we're liable to be in, to bring this succession issue to the forefront, it's probably going to depend more on who's present for duty than anything else. So I like the public safety idea, but I'm not hung up on it.
Then do we need to have a designated survivor? Have someone not attend every council meeting just in case? Like like Secretary of Energy or Interior?
Do you get punished for not surviving if you're the designated survivor?
Yeah. Gets one of us out of a council meeting every Monday.
Do you need a sense of the council, Dave, to?
We do, and I don't hear it yet. Jennifer?
I'll concur with my fellow council members, Boger and Greenlee, on this. So,
Keep
Getting
it
closer.
simple. Keep it simple.
keep it simple.
I like it.
I think we
Okay,
have it.
I think so, just to make sure I have
You
it.
don't need a vote because it was a workshop.
This is just a workshop. This is exactly
Yeah.
why we workshop.
It's a good idea.
Precisely why we workshop it. Thank you.
The last council member standing.
Right, so we are going to go mayor, mayor pro tem, and then I did hear, and then the chairperson of public safety,
Yes.
which may not be the most senior council member, but we're
Correct.
going to identify that person. And then after that, it's all council members based on seniority.
Right, and
Okay.
I think it would be wise that council keep that in mind when they appoint members to public safety and especially the chair.
You know, that brings up another point, if I may. Do we want to separate pro tem and public safety? Say you can't be both at the same time?
I don't think we need to.
You've got a succession in there that goes through 7 of you, no matter how you want to slice it up.
Okay.
There's some heirs to the British throne who have their line of succession through different places, so
King Ralph.
like that.
King Ralph.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, shouldn't we all have a course in disaster preparedness? I mean, since we may be on the line, I mean, there should be a council at our retreat or something so that there is some information on disaster.
FEMA offers those online.
Who does?
Yes.
FEMA.
FEMA, okay,
Yes, it's called the ICS series,
okay.
Incident Command System Series. And
And-
it starts with 100 and goes to 800 and leaves out 500, I think.
Periodically, FEMA also offers a 2-day training in person. Rob Morris and I both took that training.
Remember that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Now we're back to public comments. Joe, you don't have to.
I don't want to.
Good evening.
I don't want to. Good evening. Hey, your hair's growing. Thank you. It's good. It's good to be alive.
Sure is.
If you're afraid of God, you're afraid to die. And if you're afraid to die, you're afraid of God. And that's not why I'm here. I've been over here for over 10 years. I happen to be I'm in a minority group in this community. I tried to make things happen. They didn't happen. Because of what happened to me at the Port of Camas, Washougal, I was very disappointed. I was going to generate a lot of revenue for the city, in the millions. You guys be collecting $2 million a year just in the stuff I was thinking of talking about. They go into Portland State University to do the stuff that could have been done a long time ago. You guys are approving things, and you don't even know what's going on. One example, there's a 40-unit building on 8th Street, I think it is. From what I know, there's a $7 million loan on those 40 units. You know what they're going to do with those buildings? The reason I talk about that, that's what I used to build. I used to build that stuff, a lot of them. They're going to change the windows. They're going to take the paneling off. They're going to put new refrigerators in, maybe. They're going to do a few goodies. When you take that $7 million and you divide it by 40 units, it's $175,000 a unit. I can build 80 units for $7 million, brand new. They don't have to change the slab. They don't have to change the plumbing. It's right there. That's what's been going on in this community. 50 years ago, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I had an associate, 8 years of schooling, smartest guy I ever knew. He built 2 16-unit apartment buildings in 55 days, south of Seattle, with 3 snowstorms. The mayor of the town asked him, "How did you do that?" They never heard of that. 50 years ago now, 50 years ago, not today, 50 years ago. He says, here's what he said. He says, the people in Washington are good, they're kind, they're honest, they're decent, they're law-abiding. But boy, are they dumb. Hey, we're going backwards. We're not moving forward. This city can be a lot more than what it is. If I had to depend on all you people to make things happen, nothing would happen. Because of what happened to me, let me tell you what I'm doing about it. I'm all alone here. I won't be alone for long. I won't be alone for long. I lost millions of dollars here because of what's going on. And you guys lost millions of dollars because a couple of dummies don't know what's going on. I formed an organization called American Association for a Better America. I happen to love my country. God number 1, country number 2, family number 3. That's my priorities. I love that. I got friends of mine that died for this country. They're not around anymore. I don't like to see what's happening to my country. It can be a lot better than what it is. Anyhow, going back to that American Association for a Better America. It took me a long time to figure this out. You know, if things are so, they're trying to reinvent the wheel is what they're trying to do. I've been to the Vancouver Housing Authority, 4 meetings. I've told them, you guys are not building affordable housing. They're looking at stuff, they have a bunch of people working for them. I used to do that stuff without all those people, because it's not that complicated. You don't need 7 or 8 people to do things. You don't need all that extra paperwork these guys are doing. Hey, building a building is like a big box. You got 4 walls, you got a roof, you got a ceiling, you got a bathroom, you got a kitchen. Build it. Anyhow, going back to the American Association for Better America, I come up with 2 programs. One program is called All-American Financial Aid and Relief Program. I made proposals on that. I'm running into more dummies. But I'm running into some good people too. They're not, you guys aren't all dumb. When I say dumb, you're not stupid. It's what you don't know. You only know what you learn in school. It's what you don't know that's hurting you. Our country it's wide open for improvement. I see all kinds of future for this country. I like this mayor here. This is a good guy. He knows what he's doing. But you don't need 7 people to build a building. You don't need $7 million to build 40 units. Anyhow, going back to the American Association for Better America, I come up with 2 programs. All-American Financial Aid and Relief Program. That catered to the foreclosure problems and the underwater mortgages back in 2008. I've been all over the political map on this. No one has ever told me that the program won't work. Nobody. I know it could work. But let me tell you how good it is. Washington Mutual Bank would still be in business if they could have used this program. Those are the obstacles I've been running into. Bank of Clark County would still be in existence. I've been to Washington State University on this. The Board of Regents don't want to even look at it. It's too complicated. We'd have to change the whole university system. So you know what I did? I know the program can work because I've done some of this myself. But I need help. I'm not here to ask you for help. I'm not asking for any money. I wrote letters to a lot of people, from Obama to Barney Franks to Christopher Dodd, the FDIC, FHA, VA, HUD, Rera Butler, Murray, Cantwell, all these guys. These guys don't know what to do. You know what they do? They think, oh yeah, I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him. That's what they do. They pass it along. They don't know what to do. Rera Butler, I made her aware of that. I made her aware of what I could do. I used to stop her at these conventions, these memorial meetings. I told her, I said, I can show you how to sell a house right now in Clark County, and I can still do it today. And this is part of the 2 programs. I can show these kids when they get out of high school how to buy a home for $1,000 down, not 1% down. And the payments on that house would be less than what they're paying for affordable housing right now at Camas Ridge. I know how to do that. That's part of the program. I've been there. Now today, I spoke to the governor's office. I talked to the Office of Financial Management and the organization for, I guess the Organization for Financial Institutions. I talked to the attorney that represents them. All I want is the mayor to write a letter to the Board of Regents at Washington State University to have them look into what I'm doing. If it works, what do we have to do to make it happen? If it can't work, why can't it happen? And let them know what happened. Now, I've already made pledges. I made a pledge for $10 million.
Joe, I need you to wrap up, please.
I made a pledge for $10 million to the city of Camas, $10 million to the school district in Camas. I made a $10 million pledge to the city of the Camas School District in Washougal, the Washougal School District. All I'm asking in that letter, the whole thing is subject to them writing a letter. Here I am making a pledge for millions of dollars, subject to them writing a letter. I'm not asking for endorsement. I'm not looking for recommendation. I'm not looking for promotion or anything. Just look into it. And if it can work, it can generate hundreds of millions of dollars. And what I want them to do is for me to meet with their experts, the real estate lawyers, I don't care who they are, to look into what I'm doing. If it works, let's make it happen, because it could churn the whole thing around this community. I happen to like this country. Some of the things that go on around here I don't like. Anyhow, I'll shut up for the time being.
Thanks, Joe.
I could say a lot more. Thank you.
Understood. Under Mayor's Report, I've got a couple of items for you. One was a little bit of an eye-opener. David and I attended a AWC session this week ago, 2 weeks ago. It's running together. And it was an exchange session that actually most of the agenda was filled up with folks from school districts. Most of them from the South Seattle, Tacoma area, and their discussions were on different programs for homeless and children in need, children that are disadvantaged and at risk. And I actually went into the session wondering what the heck we were doing talking so much about schools. And about halfway through the session, I realized that potentially maybe in this community, and I know a few other mayors got this, got the same awakening at the same time, maybe we're not involved with the schools as much as we need to be. There were some discussions, and Dave, I don't remember who the community was, that basically the comment was made that really the future and everything that is wrapped up within the community has to do with the schools themselves, has to do with the children that are coming out of there, their education, and to us in our communities, education should probably be one of our paramount duties, even though we have school districts and we have elected school board members. It's something that cities can't ignore, can't just assume that somebody else is taking care of all of those types of things. So just a comment that we may start trying to look at some other things and some discussions with the school district, and I want to get a little bit more into some of the discussions that took place up there, but literally that was one that was an eye-opener for me, and maybe it's because, you know, we're too wrapped up in what we have in front of us today and now all the time and not looking for some of those other things because frankly, somebody else is doing it. But are we invested as much as we should be? Are we involved as much as we should be? And so.
You know, in some
So-
states, cities run the schools, like New York,
Yes, they do.
Chicago.
So it sounds like it's something worth watching. Is it available on,
I don't believe
Internet?
anybody was filming it,
no?
yeah, unfortunately.
Bad.
So, yes.
No, finish up and I'll put it on my comments.
I was going to say, the other item we have, thankfully, 5 new businesses starting within our community here in the next, well, I should take that back. We have 3 businesses that are coming into the community. AutoZone is now open, taking customers, selling products. They've certainly done some wonderful improvements to the property that were over there, and their building looks substantial, to say the least. I haven't seen where all the permits ended up coming in as far as valuations. Downtown in the Hickey Building, we've got 3 new businesses moving in there. Torque Coffee's in the next couple of weeks. American Family Insurance is going in upstairs, and then Exit Studios going upstairs as well. So again, he's getting a mix in there of what they've been trying to get and we're hoping to get. In addition to that, we started moving furniture down today to a downtown location for even my own personal business. So we're moving downtown, out of home, downtown with 4 employees. So we've got some things that are happening down there all at one time. So
Get your business license, it's all in order.
not for the downtown one yet, but
Okay.
next week. For home, yes. So on that note, Brent,
Nothing.
Michelle.
Connie and Joe and I went to the meeting, and Paul, for the district to look at some of the improvements they're considering if their bond passes. And I brought some literature if anybody wants to take a look at it, or we could set some on the table. But it was real eye-opening how bad some of their facilities are, and that the bond definitely appears to be a necessity to improving the safety of their schools, like they said, and just making their middle school and elementary school and their transportation facilities more functional. But if anybody wants a handout, we have it, and Dawn was a great host for us while we were there. So vote yes for safe schools.
Paul?
I went on a tour. I'll let Connie Joe talk about it more, especially the bus barn. The one thing I would say that frankly amazed me is we went through 3 classrooms over at Chemtegard as a middle school. When I went to middle school, everybody sat at their own desk. The teacher had a desk and a blackboard, and it was lecture audience. When we walked into Chemtegard, the students are all sitting around tables, working on projects together, collaboratively. And here's the really fascinating thing. A middle school classroom, 15 adults walked into the room, and the kids didn't pay any attention. They were so engaged in what they were doing that merely having adults there didn't matter. And I was flabbergasted. I've never seen anything like that before. It was amazing. I just wanted to mention Refuel Friday. Some of the local faith groups are doing the cooking for basically a soup kitchen, a free meal, 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. Jennifer and I worked 2 Fridays ago on behalf of our group, and I was over there this past Friday for a few minutes before the doors opened, just to see it. It's a fascinating group, and I will say, I think Jennifer would agree, it was a lot of fun
Most definitely.
to do that.
Do you know who's leading it or caring for it?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who's serving this week?
I don't, but I bet
Rose
Rose
would have that
does.
information.
Trying to recall who that is right off the top of my head. River Rock Church actually is doing it. And then we think the LDS Church might be doing it the February 13th.
But obviously, anyone's welcome, whether they're part of a specific group. to go
Yes,
serve.
oh, yes, yeah. And we welcome everyone for the meal. You know, there's no, I mean, there were a bunch of us who helped prepare the meal, who sat down and ate at the table with the rest of the people. So it's a great community experience. I highly recommend it. Local Connections, which is a local business networking group, Camas and Washougal. No entry, no membership fees, anything like that. We get together at a different business every month. This month's meeting is tomorrow morning at Northwest CPA's, which is, I'll get the address here in just a second, 532 Northeast 3rd, Suite 100 in Camas. The past 3 or 4 have been in Washougal, so we're willing to concede one to Camas at this point. Next Thursday, the 29th, Unite, the Washougal Community Coalition meets at 4:30 over at the Social Services Building. That's a prevention coalition, which I find fascinating. And Joyce will talk about other events on that day. And on a week from tomorrow, on the 3rd of February, is the RTC meeting, starts at 4 o'clock, Regional Transportation Commission, at, on the 6th floor of the county building. That's it.
Now, what am I going to talk about?
Schools.
Oh, schools. Well, Saturday was our first doorbelling effort, and about 50 people showed up to doorbell with material for the schools, and it was just amazing. The community is working very, very hard to make sure the bond issue is passing. So that was, it was just a good turnout. I hadn't seen the community turn out like that. Councilmember Dave Shoemaker and I had a very unique experience last week. We went over and watched the 5th grade Hathaway classroom debate bicycle helmets in Washougal. Should they, both sides, should they be required or not be required? They are currently not required in our city. Last summer, the Camas and Washougal Rotary and Camas Bikes supplied both the Camas and Washougal Police Departments with helmets for kids, which the purpose of this is the police officers carry them in their car, and when they see a child that's riding a bicycle without a helmet, they give them a helmet. So there are helmets available there. Dave can talk about some of the kids, but we really did have fun, and we walked into a classroom with a big screen at the front, and all the children had their iPads. So, and they were photographing. I mean, it was unique. It is a different experience. I'm the liaison to the port. The exciting things are happening at the port. They issued a bond for $4 million for 3 of their current projects. A new building, Building 17, in the new Steigerwald Industrial Center, the Heritage Trail along the Columbia River, and repairs at Grove Field. So that's very exciting what the port's doing. It's very aggressive and very exciting. the economic breakfast of Clark County. Ken Fisher of Fisher Industries was the keynote speaker, and he is quite positive about our area. He calls it a non-urban area, and he talked about that at length. And he said, when somebody talked about not having enough affordable housing in our area, he said, people from California think this is very affordable. But he said, our low crime rate and good schools make this a very desirable place to live, and it's a reason for a company to come here and relocate. So schools are economic development, and it's important that we be very aware of this. I think that's all I have to say.
29th meeting? The 29th rally?
Oh, the 29th rally, yes. The schools are having a rally on the 29th, and I think if you can also see tonight, I came down Washougal River Road, and the teachers were all waving signs and doing. It takes 60% plus one vote, if I'm correct, for this bond to pass. $58 million. It's a lot of money to ask, and it's
The rally is Thursday, the 29th at 6:30 at Jemtegard.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I had my first C-Tran meeting. Very exciting.
Condolences.
I have never sat in a meeting for 4 hours and got so little done before, actually. It was kind of sad. Basically, we mostly talked about the county and how they're threatening to sue C-Tran to basically invalidate the board composition committee's decision to give Washougal and Camas their own seat and take a seat away from the county and so on and so forth. Supposedly, their accusations are that there were OPMA violations. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But it was an interesting experience. We actually had to stop the meeting because the library was closing. Otherwise, we probably would still be sitting there. Yeah. Okay. I also went to the economic forecast breakfast, and I really don't have a whole lot to add. My colleagues were very thorough in describing what went on there, but I thought it was very interesting. Ken Fisher was probably very different than any keynote speaker they've ever had before. Very opinionated and unapologetic as far as his success and the way he thinks and what he believes. Very eccentric man, and I think a lot of people in the room were impressed, but kind of a little bit shocked by some of the things that he had to say, because he does not gloss over anything.
Operates on a different plane.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. So anyway, that was really exciting.
Is that why he's, what they say, $2.8 billion is his net worth?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he knows. It wasn't a big concern of his. They were wanting to know about his personal worth, and he's like, I don't really worry about my money.
The two things that he said that grabbed me the most were, he said, you are what you are, and you should be proud of that. You shouldn't be trying to say, well, we're part of Portland.
Yeah.
If you're going to mention Portland, the only thing that you need to say is, we're closer to PDX than Portland is. And then the other thing he said was that he walks to work sometimes. It's a little over a mile. And every time he does, he sees lots of people out walking or jogging, women, single, alone, out walking or jogging early in the morning. He said, I'm from the Bay Area. You would never, ever see that anywhere in the Bay Area. So he had a lot of very positive things to say about our community.
He did. And I wanted to ask quickly if about the city action days for Association of Washington Cities that are coming up on February 18th and 19th, if we have representatives going to that from the city.
I'll be there. I know Dave will be there. We've got board meetings that are part of that on both ends.
I'd like to go.
I'd also like to go. I didn't know if it was something that, council needs to discuss, or if we can just kind of step up if we're willing to do it. but I would definitely like to go.
What was the topic?
It is how the legislative process works, legislative priorities from AWC, talking to your legislative leaders, connecting with leaders on the Capitol campus, and there's hearings. I'm just reading from the website, but it sounds exciting. Open government training. There's the open government training that meets the mandatory training requirements. And what else? Breakout sessions on marijuana and transportation and cost containment ideas. Let's see. Understanding hard issues facing your city. I'm just reading off the agenda. And that's pretty much it.
May I make a request? I think Jennifer should stand up and turn around so we can see her shirt that was signed by Russell
yes.
Wilson.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. This was a gift from a friend, a very, very good friend. So anyway, there's this little football game on Sunday. So
I heard something about that.
Go Hawks. That's it. I'm done.
Rose, if you could get information out to Jennifer and Brent on schedules and stuff and get those nailed down so that Rose has got hotel arrangements and stuff made. Dave?
I didn't get to the presentation by Ken Fisher, but I'm not surprised that a man that requires that you have $500,000 in assets before he'll take you on as a client would have a track record of success and be rather proud of himself and not put up with fools. The other thing is I wanted to thank Joyce for being part of that effort with the fifth grade over at Hathaway. That was not only enlightening but heartening to see that group in action. There was this one little girl there, and she had some really great ideas, and we got about half of them because she spoke in a very little whisper. And I wanted to say, your ideas are as good as anybody else's, sweetheart. Get out there and build them out. But we never got a chance to make that comment. Thank you for being a part of that. I think we learned a lot about what's going on in our schools. That's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Rachel?
Schools certainly are the theme tonight and in our community for the next week, as our ballots have dropped in our mailboxes. The tour was fabulous and disheartening when you saw Jim DeGard. They explained that at the time it was built, it was real popular to copy places like California. I'm from California schools, and they have modules of buildings, and you just go out and you change buildings from one spot to another on your breaks. But up here on the gorge, the winds howl through those corridors that are wide open to the winds and the weather. It was just unbelievable. I just know what those gorge winds are like, and I can't imagine doing that for weeks. I've been driving a school bus for Camas in this wind. We have had a very windy season. That was the first thing that sold me, that these things need to be changed. But somebody mentioned that I talk about transportation. The transportation building is a pre-World War II Quonset hut. There is no insulation. And those people work in the cold. On cold days, there's nothing to warm that building. In the hot days, there's nothing to cool the building. And you know how noisy it is when you go by Les Schwab or one of these, into an automotive repair center. Loud with all the equipment. And so here's dispatch with just a small wall between the workshop, the mechanical shop, and their phone calls. So I don't know how they functioned all these years. They need a new building. So I encourage folks to get out and vote yes for safe schools. Did you get a chance, Dave, to talk to whether or not Dawn would be allowed to come and speak?
Yes, we,
Don Tarzian, the school superintendent.
yeah, we just told her that our workshop tonight was totally booked, and as you saw, it was totally booked. And then our next meeting is the 9th, when I think the date of the
For the
election is the 10th,
It's the 10th, right.
right?
It's too late. Go ahead, Dave.
No, are you finished?
Well, I am just wrapping up. Yeah, I didn't get to attend the first meeting as the liaison 2 weeks ago for the school board, at the school board. So tomorrow night will be my first meeting. I look forward to being there. Had a wonderful time on the tour. Good timing for the new kid on the block to get to see things up close and personal.
I forgot to mention, I also went to your first meeting with the idea of speaking, and I finally gave up and went home because it was obvious it wasn't going to happen. They kept putting the public comment, unlike what we do here. I wanted to say, you ought to do it like Washougal. Unlike what we do here, they kept putting the public comment off with the idea that they wouldn't have to listen to it, and I think they succeeded. There were an awful lot of people that left about the same time that I did. The other thing I wanted to
That's not
mention
normal,
was,
though. That's not the norm. You're talking about
Is that right?
C-Tran?
yeah,
Yeah, they always go first.
wouldn't you know what happens the night that I'm there?
Wouldn't you know it?
Maybe there's a reason for that. I wanted to comment on something. Everybody's been talking about the gorge winds. The other day, I was out at Gorge Winds Aviation at Troutdale, and I came back to face a 24-knot crosswind in an airplane that's designed to handle 15-knot crosswinds. So getting it on the ground was something of a task. After I taxied in and was putting the aircraft to bed, I happened to look out at the runway, and there was a bird out there that jumped up from the ground up to about 20 feet, and he started to fly into that wind. And he wasn't going anywhere. In fact, he was actually starting to move backwards. And after about 60 seconds, the bird gave up and dove down to the ground again, started walking.
That's how you feel at Jim the Guard.
People don't understand gorge winds until you've seen something like that.
There are dodo birds. Paige.
Thanks for letting me come. I love being here. I will not be here on February 9th. I know I have a basketball game and a performance at halftime that night, so.
Good. Have fun.
And wish me luck. I have an important final tomorrow.
Good luck.
Good luck.
You prepared.
I should be preparing right now.
Yeah, you should be.
Well, we're going to kick you out of here then. Matter of fact, we're going to kick everybody out. Next item, we've got an executive session on property acquisition. I think it's going to be closer to 10 minutes, but I'm going to call it 15 minutes just for grins with no action anticipated to follow.